My parents let my cousin inherit everything despite my sacrifice, so I walked away, built my own legacy, and they watch from a distance now. I'm a 29-year-old man. For as long as I can remember, my family's favorite word has been legacy. Not love, not kindness, just legacy. Like it was some sacred inheritance that defined who we were. My grandfather built a modest business in our small town, a chain of hardware stores that everyone respected. But after he passed, it wasn't about helping people anymore. It became about image, pride, and control. My parents would always say, family first, always. But what they really meant was sacrifice yourself for the family, no questions asked. Growing up, I watched how they treated my cousin Ryan like he was the crown prince of our empire. He was the one with the loud laugh, the easy charm, the kind of guy who could spill a drink on someone and still walk away with a compliment. Me, I was the quiet one, the one who stayed late, cleaned up, fixed things no one noticed. Somehow that made me invisible. I still remember my father's words when I told him I wanted to study architecture instead of business. He didn't yell that would have been easier. He just looked disappointed. You're not building your future, he said. You're building ours. That single line killed a part of me I didn't even know could die. Every dinner, every family meeting was a reminder that my life wasn't mine. Ryan would talk about his vision for the company, and my parents would beam like he'd solved world hunger. I'd sit there, quiet, chewing resentment like dry bread. But I kept telling myself loyalty would be rewarded. That if I worked hard enough, they'd finally see me the way they saw him. I was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong yet. When I graduated college, I had an offer waiting for me, a dream job in another city, a position that would have paid more than I'd ever seen and actually valued my skills. I remember holding that letter in my hands, feeling this rush of pride, until my mother called, her voice trembling. Your father's drowning in paperwork. The business isn't doing well. We need you, sweetheart. Oh. Just for a little while? Just for a little while? Those 4 words changed everything. I turned down the job, packed my bags, and went home telling myself I was doing the right thing. At first, it felt noble, purposeful. I threw myself into work, fixing invoices, managing suppliers, and learning every inch of the operation. Days blurred into nights. I'd eat cold dinners at my desk while Ryan posted pictures at charity galas. In business events, wearing our logo like a medal he hadn't earned, everyone called him the face of the company. I was just the hands, the part no one saw, but everyone relied on. When something broke, they called me. When a deal fell through, I was the one patching the damage. And when success came, Ryan took the stage with my father beside him, smiling proudly for the cameras. At family gatherings, people would praise Ryan for his vision. My mom would pat my shoulder and say, "We're proud of you too, dear. You're so dependable." Dependable. It's like an old machine that never stops working, no matter how worn down it gets. One night, after a long day balancing books no one else bothered to look at, I overheard my father talking to my uncle. His voice carried through the office door. "Ryan's got the charm," he said. "He's the one who will lead us someday." I froze. That was the moment I realized I wasn't family. I was labor. The years blurred together after that night. I became the invisible engine that kept the company alive. No one noticed, but they all depended on me. Every morning. My dad would slap me on the back and say, "You're the glue holding this place together." And every time I hinted at taking a break, my mom would sigh and whisper, "We're counting on you. You're doing this for the family." That phrase, "for the family," became their favorite leash. Whenever I hesitated, they'd tug on it just enough to keep me from wandering too far. And I always obeyed because deep down, I still wanted their approval. I wanted to believe that all my sacrifices meant something. Meanwhile, Ryan's version of hard work was booking expensive business trips and driving around town. In brand new cars that somehow ended up on the company's expense sheets. He'd post photos online, private jets, champagne dinners, designer suits with captions like, "Hustle never sleeps." It made me sick. I'd spend nights combing through receipts, seeing the numbers not add up, realizing we were bleeding money because of his ego. When I finally brought it up, my father didn't even let me finish. "Are you really accusing your cousin of theft?" he snapped. I tried to stay calm. Dad, look at the accounts. He cut me off again. You've always been too serious. Maybe if you smiled once in a while, people would take you more seriously. My mother chimed in from the doorway. He's just jealous, honey. Ryan's out there bringing in clients while you sit behind a computer. That broke something inside me. It wasn't just the dismissal. It was the realization that they needed me small. They needed me quiet, dependable, and easy to control. And so I stayed silent. But silence can only hold back resentment for so long. When my grandfather passed away, the air in our house felt different. Heavier, quieter, but not because of grief. It was because everyone knew what came next. The reading of the will. My grandfather was the only person in that family who ever made me feel seen. He was rough around the edges, but when he looked at me, I didn't feel invisible. I thought, maybe, just maybe, he'd noticed everything I'd done all these years. The day of the reading, the entire family gathered in his old office. The smell of dust and aftershave still lingered in the air. I sat beside my parents while Ryan lounged back like a king waiting for his crown. When the lawyer began, my heart pounded. Every word felt like a nail in the coffin of my hope. To my grandson Ryan, the lawyer's tone didn't waver. I leave the family business and all its assets as he represents the future of our legacy. That was it. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not even a token acknowledgement. No letter, no gratitude, nothing. I remember my mother's hand finding mine under the table. Don't make a scene, she whispered. Your grandfather made his choice. Accept it gracefully, gracefully. As if losing everything I'd worked for was some minor inconvenience, I stared at Ryan, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. My father clapped him on the back, proud and loud, already talking about the next chapter for the family. I didn't hear the rest. My ears buzzed, my throat burned. I walked out before the lawyer even finished. The hallway felt like it was closing in, years of sacrifice, erased with a few sentences. That was the moment I understood something brutal. In my family, love was never unconditional. It was earned through usefulness, and mine had just expired. The days after the will reading felt unreal, like I was living someone else's life. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, thinking it was all a nightmare, only to remember it wasn't. The business I built, the years I gave, the pieces of myself I sacrificed, all handed to Ryan like a participation trophy for existing. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandfather's face and wondered if he'd really wanted this, or if someone had wanted it for him. After a week of silence, I confronted my parents. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once done homework as a kid, dreaming about earning their pride. Tell me the truth, I said quietly. Did Grandpa really want Ryan to have everything? My father didn't look up from his coffee. Your grandfather knew Ryan, represented the family name better. He had presence, confidence. You're good behind the scenes. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Behind the scenes, I was the scenes. My mother tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Sweetheart, this isn't about fairness, she said softly. It's about perception. Ryan can lead. You'd only overthink. Something inside me cracked. I left the table, stormed into the old office, and started rifling through the filing cabinets. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. An old folder marked estate planning. Inside were drafts of the will, different versions. Some with my name included. Somewhere I was listed as Koner, but the most recent copy, the one they'd read, had red ink notes in my father's handwriting. Simplify. Ryan Solaire, keep unified image. My hands shook as I held the papers. They hadn't just abandoned me, they'd erased me, and that's when I stopped being their loyal son. I became something else entirely. I don't remember sleeping that night. I sat on my bed surrounded by those papers, the proof of my parents' betrayal, until the sun came up. Each red mark, each crossed out line, felt like another wound I'd ignored for years. I wasn't just overlooked. I was deliberately erased by morning. Something inside me snapped. Quietly, I began packing. Just a duffel bag, clothes, a few documents, the last of my savings. My heart was pounding, but for the first time it wasn't from fear. It was from clarity. I didn't owe them anything anymore. When my mother saw the suitcase by the door, she froze. "Where are you going?" "Away," I said simply. "For good." My father came storming down the stairs, his voice thundering. "Don't be dramatic. You're angry, I get it. But this is your family. You don't just walk away." I met his eyes, and for once I didn't flinch. "You made sure I was never really part of it," he scoffed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. We gave you a roof, food, a place in this family business." That's when the words came out, steady and sharp, years of swallowed pain turning into truth. "You didn't give me anything. You took everything I had to give." The room went silent. My mother started crying, but even her tears felt rehearsed. My father just stared, speechless for once in his life. I walked past them, the house feeling smaller with every step. No money, no inheritance. No family, just the weight of everything I'd lost and the faint, terrifying freedom of knowing it was finally my life again. As the door closed behind me, I realized something. Sometimes breaking down isn't destruction. It's rebirth, and mine had just begun. When I left my hometown, I had less than $200 in my bank account and a duffel bag full of resentment. I ended up in a noisy city 3 hours away, renting a tiny studio that smelled like dust and old paint. The walls were thin, the mattress lumpy, but for the first time in my life I could breathe. No guilt trips, no watchful eyes, no family legacy hanging over my head. Just silence and the terrifying promise of starting over at first. I took whatever jobs I could find, delivery runs, warehouse shifts, bookkeeping for small shops. I used the skills I'd learned from years in the family business: logistics, supply chains, numbers, discipline. The irony wasn't lost on me all those years they'd told me I wasn't a leader. And yet here I was, keeping entire operations afloat for strangers who actually said thank you. One night at a late delivery, I met a man named Victor, a retired business owner who'd once run a regional logistics firm. He watched me manage a truck scheduling issue on the spot and later asked, "You ever think about running your own thing?" I laughed. "With what money?" He smiled. "Money's the least valuable thing a man can have. Skill and hunger, those matter." Over the next few months, Victor became something I'd never really had before, a mentor. He helped me secure small contracts, taught me negotiation, and reminded me that leadership isn't inherited, it's earned. Slowly, a new rhythm formed. My work was grueling, but every hour felt mine. I wasn't building someone else's empire anymore. I was laying the foundation for my own. One night, while writing invoices in my cramped apartment, I caught myself smiling. I realized the truth I'd spent years running from. I was never meant to inherit their legacy. I was meant to build my own. The first year of my startup felt like a test of everything I'd ever learned and everything I thought. I couldn't survive. I poured every ounce of energy into it, building systems, hiring 2 people who believed in me, sleeping on the office floor when deadlines loomed. It was chaos, but it was my chaos. No manipulation, no guilt, no one telling me to do it for the family. Every decision, every mistake was mine, and that alone made it worth it. The business started small, managing deliveries for local vendors. But I saw something my family never had: opportunity and innovation. While they clung to outdated traditions, I introduced tracking software, automation, and efficiency reports. Clients noticed. Within a year, we were signing regional contracts. Within 2, journalists started calling it the quiet logistics revolution. The first time I saw our company's name mentioned online, my chest tightened. Pride, disbelief, maybe even grief, all tangled together. For so long, I'd been the nameless worker behind other people's success. Now my name was on it, but late at night, when the city lights flickered outside my apartment, I'd catch myself wondering, do they know? Do my parents see the articles? The interviews? Do they sit in that same old living room, scrolling through their phones and realizing the son they erased was the one who built something lasting? I never reached out. I couldn't. That part of me, the boy who wanted their approval, was gone. But the ache lingered, faint but stubborn, like an old scar that itches in the rain. I told myself it didn't matter. I had everything I needed: purpose, pride, peace. But somewhere deep down, I knew the story with my family wasn't over yet. And fate has a cruel way of reopening closed doors. It started as a rumor, a whispered comment at an industry event. "Hey, isn't your cousin Ryan the one running Reynolds & Sons?" Heard they're in trouble. I brushed it off at first, assuming it was just gossip. But then I started hearing it everywhere. Suppliers complaining about unpaid invoices, employees quitting without notice, clients jumping ship. The empire my parents had bet everything on was crumbling. Curiosity got the better of me. One night, I looked up the company's financial reports, public records now riddled with red flags. Massive debts, lawsuits, declining assets. Ryan had run the family legacy straight into the ground, just like I always feared he would. And the irony. He'd been too proud to ask for help. Until now, a mutual acquaintance called and said, "Ryan's been trying to reach you. He wants your advice, says you're the only one who can save them." I almost laughed. The same people who called me jealous and small-minded now wanted my expertise. Then came the phone calls. First, my mother, tearful and trembling. "Please, honey, your father's not well. The company's failing. You have to talk to Ryan." Then my father, voice brittle and deflated. "You're a smart man. We could fix this together. For the family. For the family." Those words once chained me. Now they meant nothing. I listened in silence, their voices cracking under the weight of desperation. I could have gloated, could have thrown every cruel phrase back at them. But I didn't. I just said, "I hope you find a way through it," and hung up. That night, I stood by my window overlooking the city I'd built my life in. The silence was deafening but peaceful. They used to call me the quiet one. Now my silence was louder than their empire's collapse. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant buzzed in, sounding hesitant. "There's a couple here asking for you. They said they're your parents." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen them in years. Part of me thought I never would. I told her to send them in, more out of curiosity than emotion. When they walked through the glass doors, I almost didn't recognize them. My father, once proud and commanding now, looked smaller, older, his shoulders slumped. My mother's eyes darted around my office, taking in the plaques, the view. The name, my name, etched on the glass wall. Lewis & Co. Logistics. My father cleared his throat. "You've done well," he said, trying to sound casual but failing. "We're proud of you." It was strange hearing pride from the same man who once said I'd never lead. I didn't respond. He went on, fumbling through pleasantries before finally getting to the point. "The company's gone. Ryan's moved away. We were hoping maybe you could help us rebuild. The family name still means something." I leaned back, studying them. "The family name? You mean the one you erased me from?" My mother's voice trembled. "We made mistakes, but this is our chance to fix things, to be a family again." I stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the city skyline. Every tower, a reminder of what I built without them. Then I turned back, calm and steady. "You made your choice. Now you live with it."
Oh, yeah.
My father just nodded, eyes wet, pride finally replaced by silence as they left my office. I felt something unexpected, not anger, not revenge, just peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop needing closure, because you've already written your own. In the months after that confrontation, I didn't hear from my parents again. No calls, no messages. Just silence, the same kind I once feared, now turned into my sanctuary. Every so often, I'd hear bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. My parents had sold their house, downsized, and were living quietly on the edge of town. Ryan had moved overseas after the company went bankrupt. The golden family name they'd worshipped had turned to dust. And me. My company was thriving. We just signed a major national contract, and, for the first time, I felt like I wasn't chasing anything. Not approval, not validation, just purpose. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family that once told me I wasn't fit for legacy now watched my name appear in headlines. But this time, I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile about it. I'd learned that revenge isn't always noise. Sometimes it's silence paired with success. A few months later, I attended a business awards ceremony. Our company won Entrepreneur of the Year. When I walked up to the stage, the lights were blinding, the applause overwhelming, but my mind was calm. I held the trophy, leaned toward the mic, and said, "This is for everyone who was ever told they weren't good enough. For the quiet ones who were overlooked, underestimated, or erased. Real legacy isn't inherited, it's built." The crowd stood, clapping, but I wasn't thinking of them. I was thinking of that younger version of myself, the boy sitting alone in an office at midnight, still believing loyalty would earn love. He'd finally been proven wrong, in the best possible way. And as I looked out into that sea of faces, I realized I didn't need my family's name anymore. Because I'd built one of my own. It took me years to go back. I told myself it didn't matter that the past was buried and I had no reason to revisit it. But one quiet Sunday evening, I found myself driving down that familiar country road. It's the one that led to my grandfather's old property. The air smelled of dust and memory. The wooden gate creaked when I pushed it open, and the moment I stepped through, time seemed to fold in on itself. The house was still there, though barely. The once white paint had peeled to gray, windows cracked, ivy crawling up the sides like nature reclaiming what was hers. I walked through the empty halls, my footsteps echoing where family laughter used to live. Dust floated in the slanted light, and for a moment, I could almost hear his voice again, steady, patient, proud. I stopped in his old office. The room where it had all started. The desk was gone, but the faint outline on the floor remained a ghost of structure.
Ow.
Just like the family that once filled this space. I knelt down, ran my hand along the faded wood, and whispered, "You taught me to build for others, but I had to lose everything to build myself." The words hung in the air, heavy but freeing. I stood up, took one last look around, and walked outside. The sun was setting, bathing the broken walls in gold, the kind of light that makes even ruins look sacred. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not grief either. Just gratitude for every betrayal, every wound, every lesson that had shaped me as I walked down the dirt path toward my car. The wind carried the faint scent of sawdust and rain, the smell of beginnings. That's when I realized legacies don't come from names or wills. They're written by those brave enough to start over.